So I wonder if there's anybody new today. If there is, please feel welcome. I'm Robert Beatty, and this is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community. And there's a wealth of teachings and teachers at portlandinsight.org every night of the week except Saturday. And those of you that are joining on Facebook and YouTube, if you'd like to be more engaged, you can come and join us here on Zoom. And you can find that by going to robertbeatty.com and scrolling down the page, and you'll find a way to get the link. So that's that. Sunday morning. Thank you all for making the effort to be here. I took some great heart-softening, heart-opening delight this morning as I was sitting here for 45 minutes or an hour getting set up before you came, watching how different windows would wink on, and then it would be like a little surprise. Oh, it's this person. Oh, it's them. Oh, how nice. It's very heartwarming. And then I played that beautiful song by Jennifer Berzon, The End of Desire. She's actually doing an all-day thing with Joanna Macy right now that I will put the link where I'll find that link and put it in the chat while Jim is doing the movement this morning. I'm going to tune in, I believe, for the rest of the afternoon. So I thought, poetry-wise this morning, I'd like to start with an oldie but a goodie. This may be This is in some ways the most important poem of my life. I came across it at least 35 years ago. I know it was at least 25 because my dad died 25 years ago, and I spoke it at his memorial service. But whatever the case, and when I turned 50, Jim Dalton lovingly did a roast of me with this poem. It still really rings true. It's by Juan Ramón Jiménez, a Spanish poet of the, I think, 1950s, translated by Robert Bly. I am not I. I am not I am this one standing beside me whom I do not see. Whom at times I do manage to visit, but who mostly I forget. Who remains calm and silent when I hate. I'm lost the line. Who remains calm and silent when I speak, and who forgives gently when I hate. Who walks where I am not. Who will remain standing when I die. I am not I am this one standing beside me whom I do not see, whom at times I do manage to visit, who remains calm and silent when I speak, who forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, and who will remain standing when I die. I am not I am this one standing beside me whom I do not see. I'm going to be speaking about mindfulness of mind and mental states today. I think it's a beautiful poem to lead into that. Who forgives when I hate, who remains calm and silent when I speak. It's a very important thing we're doing here. This is the creation of our individual and collective destiny. If we don't awaken to and question and transform the past, the way it manifests in the present moment, then we're doomed. There's a word for it. We are inevitably going to keep living the same old thing over and over again. Groundhog Day. But in relationship, in our emotions, in our desires, in the catastrophes that befall us. But way back 2,600 years ago, a brilliant, ordinary human being, Siddhartha Gautama, observed how to set himself free. And these teachings have come down through all these generations, 140 to 160 of them, teacher to student, living transmission. So let's remind ourselves of the refuge in being awake in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. And I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of practice. Sometimes the meaning of these concepts opens up before us, and for myself, it's as though I never understood it before. I never knew the magnitude of what I was saying with I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It's nothing less than a complete revolution for us as individuals. So let's do that mysterious, wonderful thing we call meditation. Let's sit comfortably upright. And what shall we do? First off, we might reflect a little bit on gratitude. It's so easy to feel kind of grumpy and shortchanged, and there's all these flaws in life and experiences we'd like to be having, and some that we're having that we'd rather not be having. And there's a forgetting of how neck deep in grace we are. How to simply be warm, to be relatively safe, for our heartbeats to be regular and appropriate. for digestion to be working and the brain to be working. For the power grid to be working so we have our computers and we can gather together. The gratitudes are actually an endless list once we get going. So many conditions come together so we can practice. I guess one last gratitude, maybe the first gratitude, is thanks to the Buddha and to all those who have passed down these teachings. People who've devoted their lives to them. And now we sit comfortably upright. With a very clear intention to strengthen concentration of mind and mindfulness. Two exquisite mental factors that gather along with them everything else that we need for our awakening. So please come home. Come home to the breathing. This one-of-a-kind, extraordinary body that started breathing a few eye blinks ago and continues to participate in a communion sort of way with all of life. Why not inhabit this breath with extraordinary love and compassion, with concentration, with mindfulness? Somewhere in the unbelievable vastness of space, there's a little tiny planet. And on that little tiny planet sits something that we each experience as I, me, mine. And so inhabiting this breath, it's sometimes at the start it seems as though one is looking down into the body from somewhere behind the pituitary gland, and now I am going to pay attention to my breath. And that's fine. But in time that morphs into awareness arises with the sensations of breathing. And with concentration, the mind stays rather close to the breath. One could say they co-arise. Most of us come to meditation with a lot of baggage. Habits of mind that are colored by desire and greed and wanting and not wanting and disliking. Discursive thoughts and stories and fantasies and rationales and conversations. With sleepy dullness and a kind of deluded blurriness. With doubt. With emotional storms and seductions. Fortunately, these are all normal, garden variety human mind. And in time, they don't stand a chance in the face of mindfulness and concentration. And along the way, we embrace them. We really see them for what they are. Desire and aversion and lust and hate and thinking and planning and remembering. Again and again, we come home to breathing, to this breath right now. Being present at the beginning of this breath right now. Being present through its entire lifetime. To be alive and awake is to find ourselves awakening in the middle of a river. We tend to be carried downstream in the river. It's the river of karma vipaka, actions and their results. The great unimaginable web of karmic actions of the past manifesting as the reality of this moment. And somehow, mysteriously, we're capable of adding something new to this mix. Somehow, mindfulness is possible. Somehow, awakening into this mindfulness with concentration is possible. Making mid-course corrections in our fate, in our ballistic curve, is possible. One moment at a time, one breath at a time. One awakening in the midst of some wild thought or some depressive mood. And so, with the greatest of kindness and gratitude, let us be awake, now, here, with this in-breath, with this out-breath. Not with an idea of in-breathing and out-breathing, but the actual flesh and blood and bone, tangible expansion of chest and abdomen and nostrils. Abdomen or nostrils, more likely. One of our great longings is to be able to take a break. We go to great lengths to try to take a break. And often what we're really longing for is just to not be so embroiled in the neurotic mind. The neurotic mind with its, am I okay, am I not okay, should I be doing this, shouldn't I be doing this, I'm a bad person because I do this, etc., etc. I dislike that person, I dislike this person, I hate myself. Simple mindfulness of breathing can provide us with a real break. In the short run, we learn how to use mindfulness and concentration to calm things down, to cultivate that place where the mind is actually quiet. And so with great kindness and perseverance, we take up mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing, again and again and again and again. Changing the channel. In the old days, it would be lifting the needle from one track to another. Why not inhabit the track of rest, relaxation, ease, concentration? Mindfulness. And please now, let us bring awareness to the life of the body. Feel this precious, one-of-a-kind, ever body. And perhaps take a moment to do the great I love you mantra with your own name at the end on the in-breath. I love you. And then on the out-breath, think of a loved one, wish them well, surround them with light. Any metaphor or strategy you use to offer a blessing. And then bringing the eyes, awareness to the eyes and the face. And then letting the eyes open and let them be the eyes of blessing. And if I can make it happen here, I'm going to have a reprise of a loving kindness practice from the internet. I'll probably get in trouble on YouTube. Well, maybe it won't go there. Anyway, so here's a loving kindness blessing from the Bengsons. See if I can do it. I'm going to do this. Desktop 1. This. That's working. Make it bigger. And it's a song for this time, for this challenging time as well.
Very low, Robert.
Thank you.
So glad that you turned this on and welcomed us into your home, and you are welcome into our home. We're in Dayton, Ohio. Sean's parents' house.
That's my parents' house.
Sean's parents' house. We were in Louisville when the shit hit, and we packed our 3-year-old into a car. We drove kind of far. We drove here, and we've been so lucky and blessed to be safely here. And we thought.
Sorry, it takes me a while to unmute. I'm on my little tiny phone. You can ask me that. I'm really excited about offering the beginnings of the Fabulous Fierce Females, which is going to start on Friday, March 5th. We're going to start by looking at Susan Murcott's book, The First Buddhist Women, Poems and Stories of Awakening, which is a fantastic book. You often read bits and pieces from other people's translations. So I'm really happy that we can look at this book together, and it's open to women, those who identify as women, and also non-binary. So if you're interested, it's a good idea to go sign up on the website, because it's going to be a limited group again, so that we can all see and share with each other. And tonight is one of the first and third Sunday Vipassana Insight and Metta practices, 6:30. So I hope to see anyone and everyone joining in for a repeat of the same sitting and metta practice and being in companionship with each other. So I think that's it for me. Thank you. And hello, Sangha.
Thank you, Kendall.
You're welcome. welcome. Great to see you, and good luck with your weekend next weekend with your retreat.
That's right. That's my next thing I'm going to share. I think it's shared, isn't it? This is a nice big... This big tree, this giant old-growth tree, is on the Salmon River Trail, less than a quarter mile from the trailhead. It's quite...
Through, Robert.
Oh, it's not coming through?
It's twirling.
Go again.
This... I am... Well, not very. I'm a little disappointed in this technology. It sort of works, and then it sort of doesn't work. Did we get it there? No. Okay, I'm going to give up. Next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I will be offering a stay-at-home weekend retreat. So you stay in your own home. Hopefully you plan to get rid of lots of responsibilities, maybe even get food ready, and then spend the weekend in practice. It's sponsored through Hollyhock, the retreat center in Canada that I teach at, have taught at for almost 30 years. And you can find the info for that on the website. There's also, in the chat, probably a ways back now, there's a link to that marvelous way that you can practice generosity and support PIMC. Become a monthly donor, perhaps, and with that, the encouragement to find some way to be generous every day. Be on the lookout. How can I be generous here? Starting with, of course, yourself, and give yourself at least an hour a day for your own spiritual practice and a little yoga, but be very generous with yourself. And then there's a few other links in there. One for an interview, what do they call a podcast that was done with me. And I guess that's all. There's several other things. I invite you to help yourself. So, Jim, would you be ready to... Are you still ready and capable of doing a movement practice?
I'm still upright and breathing.
All right. Go.
All right, here we go. I'm going to check out the camera angle. Guess that's going to work out fine. All right. So here goes with mindful movement. We begin by just swaying like kelp in the ocean. Just sway back and forth. Let your arms go any place. This is a slow version of keep going on. But just when I finish my routine in class, I have people bring their feet together and close their eyes and just be a flowing breeze, a wind in the willow, and just let things move. Just being aware of all the different sensations in different parts of the body. Some are real clear, some are just obscure and hidden underneath this layer and that layer, but there's all these muscles and tendons and bones that can flow like the river. But we can open our stance and flow back and forth deliberately and just be aware of every change as the weight moves from one leg to the other. The wrists are soft, the shoulders are soft, and there's this flowing awareness. Aware of this moment, you can't count them. Well, I can't count them, maybe you can. But we create this rhythm and then add to the side-by-side movement, reach overhead like the moon is rising over the lake. Here's the lake, and then here's the moon. Awareness of sensations feet, shoulders, the arms, the spine, everything working together in a river of sensation. We'll go back the other way. Let the moon rise and set. And somehow the tone of the image in our mind becomes the tone of the state of mind. The foundation of mindfulness in the body has a influence on the feelings, the mental state, slowing down, back and forth. We can pull our arms back as if we're holding a big beach ball behind us and just breathe for a while. Let the ribs separate as you breathe in. Then they release and let go, let be. Large breath, deep calm, deep healing. Then opening the palms to the sky. Just hold your life in your hands for a few moments and just appreciate it. Gratitude for the ability to stand, breathe, maintain balance, dignity, poise. Let your body express your dedication to practice. And then lower the arms, sink into your knees, reach out to the side, and then just sink down the center. Opening, letting everything go down, down, down. Rising, sink. Notice the mood. Big round movements with no obstacles, no hindrances. We're creating karma that's smooth and joyful, has a little tranquility right at the end of the cycle. Opening and then sinking into stillness. Pausing. Grateful for our health, our connection to our Sangha, our devotion to our practice, cultivating deeper mindfulness, deeper loving awareness, deeper wisdom on the path. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you, Jim. Gallery view. All right. Let's just sit quietly for a few minutes. Something of extreme importance is happening here. Awakening is happening. One way to think of this awakening is that there is I, me, mine, a separate self that discovers that it's suffering because of various attachments, or suffering because the world isn't behaving as one thinks it should be behaving. And then one sets off on the quest. One sets off and becomes a spiritual seeker. And then there are practices to do and retreats to attend and study to do, and it's a project. It's a lifetime project. This is a way of thinking. It's a worldview. There's another way of thinking in which it becomes real or true that waking up is happening, and we either cooperate with it or we hinder it. That it was Carlfried Graf von Durkheim who wrote a book over 100 years ago, lovely little book, about the call from within, that there's something from within, that there's a pull to awakening, a momentum, a gravity to awakening that is pulling us. And both are, of course, worldviews. I've been experiencing I had a moment in the last couple of weeks and I'm a little reticent to talk about it because, I don't know, just a little superstitious perhaps. But anyway, someone asked me how I was. And I basically said, well, I'm fine. And then I set off into, well, there's my right hip, and it's a problem. And if I have to I'm doing all these things about it. And then there's the dry eye syndrome in my right eye. And there's a kind of a litany of things that aren't quite working right. And all of a sudden it became really clear to me that what was happening was that I was making a self that disapproved of these phenomena and felt a little bit like it wasn't fair, that it shouldn't be like this. And maybe if I just tried harder, it wouldn't be like this. Like if I just did my yoga every day. But the fact is, my body, as far back as I can remember, has always been hurting. And it's getting more. And the people around me continue to refuse to be exactly what I would like, when I would like. They're very set in their ways. The political situation persists in being exactly as it is, and it's quite unsatisfactory. But what was really of great significance was the realization that there's a kind of self-indulgence, a self-creation, which is, this isn't okay, I'm going to make it better. And it's optional. And since that moment of realization, there's been just a whole lot less suffering. There's still the pain. This body is, in fact, pretty painful. And it doesn't even have anything really bad wrong. Woo. I spoke just yesterday with a student friend of mine who was riding to work and had a really bad bicycle accident. Hasn't been able to work, fractured, facial fractures, lacerated liver, I mean, serious stuff. And enough brain rattling that they can't work now. A bike accident, just like that, boom. So anyway, I want to stick to this realization that the Buddha was absolutely right. The dukkha in our lives, the events, the phenomena in our lives, the birth, sickness, old age, decay, death, the having experiences we don't want to have, not having experiences we do want to have, being with people we don't want, and not being with the beloved, that's all going to happen. And the amount of suffering that I do in response to that, by somehow, mostly unconsciously, believing it shouldn't be like that. I'm going to fix it so it won't be like that. I'm going to become in such a way that it won't be like that. I'm going to do my yoga and stretching and strengthening, and this body is going to become more flexible and painless than it ever was. It was always hard doing yoga, I found. It was always painful and unpleasant. And then somewhat pleasant. Have to acknowledge the yoga teachers in our group. There is some relief from doing yoga. It's important. I think without my yoga and stretching and strengthening, I wouldn't be able to get out of the car. So it's important that I continue to, and out of bed for that matter. So, what remains when there's not that it shouldn't be like this? There's life. There's life with a whole lot less discursive thought. There's just, it's like this. Life is like this. These thoughts are like this. These feelings are like this. These moods are like this. And so I posed the question, something that you can explore for yourself. How are the ways that your conditioning creates extra pain and suffering by being unwilling, unable to accept things as they are? Which is, of course, the first and second and third noble truths, working with them. Some of you, actually quite a few of you, are in the 4 Foundations of Mindfulness class that I'm offering on Wednesday nights. We're halfway through now. Not possible to join. But this coming up week is I'll be talking about mindfulness of mind and mental states. And this, what I've been describing, is a mindfulness of mind, mindfulness of a pattern, mindfulness of a constriction, of a way of experiencing which had an additional unnecessary layer in it, which is the layer of I, me, mine, I don't like this. I'm going to... I had this funny little... when this realization came, I imagined myself, and then I did it on Zoom before anybody came on. I did the little lip thing, which is... It's not fair. It's not fair that my body hurts. Now that's old. It's not, well, it's actually young, isn't it? It's very young. So I want to talk a little bit about the Buddha's approach. So this is beyond mindfulness of the body, inclusive of mindfulness of the body, and mindfulness of feeling, the pleasant and unpleasant and indeterminate, not yet decided impulses, the liking and disliking impulses. And then there's this capacity of being aware of mind itself. So one of the axioms is that thoughts that we repeat and cherish, thoughts that we practice, become mental habits. They become our personality. They become where the mind automatically goes. One that I've been working with in my own regard is when boredom arises, there's quite a habitual, strong conditioning to reach for this and look at the news. What a bad habit. Similarly, check the email. So I'm working with those states and just leaving that thing down sometimes. Actually turning it off. That's a real thing. Turn it off. But the Buddha worked with trying to be efficient in the work that we do with these mental states. And he categorized things, the roots of suffering being greed, hatred, and ignorance. I want it, I don't want it, I don't want it, and I can hardly pay attention to what's going on here. And so there are classes of thoughts which are for sense pleasure and wanting. There are thoughts which are rooted in anger and rejection. And there are thoughts that are rooted in cruelty. And quite predictably, the antidotes for these, the antidote for sensual pleasure, desire, endless desire, is renunciation of restraint. And the answer for the replacement for anger is compassion. And the replacement for cruelty is loving kindness. We can't do this kind of intentional work unless we have a very strong basis, or quite a strong basis, in mindfulness and concentration. They are our toolkit, in a way. They're the fundamental toolkit. I just giggled because I carry a Leatherman on my waist. It's my omnipresent, not at night, but I always carry this big, heavy Leatherman. And I find a use for it every day. I use her 2 or 5. And actually I was putting my chains on the other day in the snow, and they were stuck. And I needed pliers, and I smiled, and I thought, aha, here are my needle nose pliers right on my hip. Well, mindfulness and concentration are like a Leatherman for the mind, for the heart. And what are they? Concentration is the mind's ability to pay attention to an object and stay there. I got 2 new pairs of glasses. I'm feeling very rich. Everything's clear. It's wonderful. So to be able to take this, actually you probably can't see that very well. Here, this is a nice little thing. It's a little guitar pick. The mind can take this object and stay there. And the longer it stays there, the more details are visible or knowable on that object. And mindfulness is this companion, incredibly powerful in its own right, which knows what's happening. So there's concentration and mindfulness. And together, they can really reveal what is actually happening. So, do you ever get caught up in craving and lustful and wanting thoughts? I want something, I want it. And maybe even have some of them that you're in some kind of a battle with yourself, that I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to do that, And then you find out, well, you've done it again, and I really wish I wouldn't do that, and it's some sense indulgence. And well, obviously the battle doesn't work. But there is this other completely different way of working with it, in which we use mindfulness and concentration to illuminate the fact of craving, to illuminate the fact of I'm wanting. There is wanting. And so, let's say you're sitting in meditation. It doesn't happen only in meditation, but it's clearer in meditation. You're sitting in meditation, and some familiar pattern of craving, of wanting, comes up. We could go to war with it. We could get up and fulfill the desire. Or we could realize that we are shaping our own destiny by planting the seeds that we plant in our own consciousness. And we could look at craving as it is, what it is. We could look at it really carefully. We could use concentration and mindfulness. Hang on just a second. I'm going to center here. I doubt you can hear it, but there's a very loud weed eater quite close by out there that I'm finding distracting. I didn't used to get distracted by things like that, but with age it seems it's a little harder to filter out. Oh, I know what I might do. I'll use technology. I'll unplug these and I'll put on their noise canceling. Oh, it's dead. Well, it might have been good. So anyway, what to do? Here's this mind state. We could decide, I'm going to focus on my breath. And I'm going, well, actually exactly with this. I can use this sound. I can focus on the breath. And whenever the lust or desire, wanting comes up, I can let it go. I can suppress that desire. And lo and behold, in time, probably, it goes away. Now there's another one. This is a perfect example, actually. This sound, it's a blower. It's not a weed eater. Whatever it is, it's fluctuating in its intensity, and it keeps pulling consciousness to it. And there is, along with that is coming aversion, disliking. It's interrupting me. I don't like it. So what shall I do? If I were sitting, it'd be easy, relatively. I'd just come back to the breath. Oh, it stopped. Relief. Back. Come back to the breath and basically tune it out. And that, after all these years of practice, that's probably quite possible with this. But there's another strategy. If that first strategy doesn't work, can I maybe just ignore it? Just go on and do what I need to do, and so that desire or that aversion just fades out. Another thing I could do is remember, well, it's impermanent. It's an irritant, like right now. It's an irritant and it's a pain in the butt, but it's not going to stop me from basically doing what I need to do here. And so I can just basically remember that I don't have to go to war with it. It'll disappear. Then there's another strategy suggested by the Buddha, or at least commentators on the Buddha, which is to overpower it, to really take the mind and dig into something else, to do a mantra or something, and to just yank the mind away from it. The most potent of all, in my experience, is to let it be what it is, which is connecting back to the whining, to let the ways in which this body is painful, to let the ways in which this life is disappointing, to really just let them be, and to give up the fantasy of somehow or another making the external events and the internal moods and things comply with what I want. Hang on just a second. I'm just going to sit here with that irritating sound. Oh, there's also an enemy image. There's a person attached to that, and there's some disliking of that person. Now, isn't that interesting? Strange, huh? It's no wonder we can create wars with each other. What I'm hoping to get across today. I usually have one or two things. Kai is saying, I don't hear the blower. Yeah, it's not. This microphone is such that you probably wouldn't hear it. But it's loud enough in here. So there's a list of mental states that the Buddha talked about. And I think it's quite an interesting list to start observing when I have these, when you have these in your mind stream. Is this mind greedy? Does it want something? Is it busy wanting something? Or is it not wanting something? The greedy, not greedy split. Is it hateful, disliking, or is it not hateful? We could polarize it differently. Is it hateful or is it filled with loving kindness? Is it a mind in which I'm lost in my fantasies and my neurotic patterns and my worries and my reflections on the news and so on? Or is it not that? That's a deluded or not deluded consciousness. Is it contracted or distracted? Or is it not those? Is it mindful and awake and concentrated? And then there's some more that they emphasize, but that's probably plenty. The main one we deal with is this personality with its liking and disliking and the stories from the past and the worries and the fantasies of the future. In order to be free, we really must develop enough concentration and mindfulness to start perceiving them as what they are, which is mind states. That the content is not so critical. It's that here I am in my old remembrances of... I used to have so much melancholy. And fortunately, that really is... I remember one particular Christmas, this is about 15 Christmases ago, I guess, maybe more. I was sitting on the couch feeling sad because of all the past Christmases that were no longer in existence. And that, like this recent insight, it became so obvious that was insane. Why would I make myself unhappy about something that happened 15 or 20 years ago that doesn't exist anymore? But it exists if I bring it into mind and therefore torture myself with it. There's something sort of funny about it in a cosmic humor sort of way. Oh, that I just discovered. For a little while there, I ceased hearing the blower, and then it came back into consciousness. And then it's an irritant again, only when I hear it. So I think that's really what I wanted to say, to bring attention to the fact that way beyond concentrating on the breath and having that be our purpose is really much bigger. It's setting ourselves free from the conditioned mind and all the old habits, all the old karmas that contribute to this moment existing. That what exists in this moment will condition the next moment in the old pattern unless there's this spaciousness, this awareness, this mysterious capacity we have, which is not embedded in the experience, which is autonomous of the experience. And I guess there's one other thread to tie up, which is, this is called insight meditation. And with concentration, we can suppress these mental states. With insight, with deeper and deeper wisdom, with deeper and deeper clarity, we can see that these states are temporary and impersonal. And we can actually weaken them so they arise less and less and less powerfully and less frequently. So here we are on the side of the model that says, I can do something. I have a way of working with this mind that can actually reduce suffering. And then on the other side of the model the other model, which is, Isn't this extraordinary how waking up is happening and enlisting this capacity of cultivating mindfulness and concentration? So I think that's where I want to stop. There's a more of a little disappointment. It's like, well, that's not as clear as the intuition was. But I hope you have something in that you can work with and feel very positive about it and encouraged by. So mindfulness of mind. And I invite any comments or questions, sharing your experiences in working with mind in yourself. If you wish to speak, please unmute yourself and you will have the floor, so to speak.
I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed in the song Pollinate Joy. Oh boy.
Right. Yeah.
Robert, this is Vic.
Hello, Vic.
Hey, good morning. So, I think I'm beginning to realize that there's a difference between greed and, I guess, tanha, the second noble truth with thirst. It feels similar, but I think they're different. I don't know if you can speak to, what's greed versus what's thirst.
Tanha, as I understand it, is more fundamental and it manifests as greed and aversion. It's like, I want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. Both of those are tanha, and they both cause suffering. And the greed is when there's a self that wants to have pleasure, to pull in the delights of the world. I want things to be my way. And then aversion is the opposite of that. So they're both tanha. And it has to do with the creation of a self which is in opposition to the world, or in opposition to the way things are, I guess would be more accurate.
Robert.
I see a cat.
That's true. This is Bob. She's actually, it was talking about a leaf blower. She decided to clean herself through the meditation as she sat on my lap. So it was either I got to accept her sitting here and actually cleansed herself.
Well, there you were cleansing your consciousness, and she was cleansing herself.
Yes, she was, and now she's just sleeping and being. She's a very sweet little girl, and her sister's over there on the window. Anyway, it was interesting because what Vic said, like thirst to me is a necessity. Like we were talking about, eustress and that kind of thing, where the thirst is the necessity, but the greed comes in when you go beyond quenching what is necessary. You have to have food to survive, you have to have liquids to survive, but you don't have to take what beyond what you need. That to me is the difference. It's like what you were talking about, and I keep telling my friends, pain is inevitable, But when you go beyond it, then suffering is optional. Does that make sense?
I don't know that it's going, I'm not sure. The terminology is always challenging with these things. But I think the desire for food, the desire for whatever it is by its nature greed. It is the wanting factor of the self. And we can learn to work with it so that we are accepting of our needs and use the greed factor, the wanting, the desire factor very skillfully.
Okay.
And that word thirst, tanha, it doesn't mean thirst for water. It means thirst for life, thirst for being, craving to be. And so it would be a mistake if we narrowed it down to think that it was about water. That's why some of these words don't translate well. Better to have it as like dukkha, and having tanha as tanha. It's that profound craving for life to keep on living. And one of the things we do is create a self that has, then we attribute to it its desires and its dislikes. And it's through mindfulness and concentration and the Eightfold Path that we set ourselves free from identification with these things, so we can notice, well, here's lust. Thank you for sharing. I don't, and we do this all the time with all kinds of little things. But then there are the bigger things that we're still very attached to, and then we can use the practice very intentionally to intentionally observe the factor of lust, of wanting or not wanting, and watch how it waxes and then wanes and then it's gone.
So are you saying it's kind of like a control of accepting or not accepting?
It's learning to move into the direction of intentionally accepting.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's operationalizing that old Irish prayer that became so popular in the AA world. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, knowing the difference is really powerful. And knowing how to accept, knowing that kind of, martial arts move of accepting. I see in this mind so often little, don't like that. I want this, don't like. And then just, oh, okay, so what? That doesn't matter. But that learning to accept and relinquish is an acquired skill, developed skill.
Thank you.
Robert, it's Joan.
Hello, Joan.
How are you? I have very good intentions when I start to meditate that I'm not going to let the things I want to disappear. My intention is to just let them sit there, and then pretty soon they begin to aggravate me, and I start to try to push them away. And I know I'm not supposed to. Can you give me a good way to keep them there?
Can you give me an example? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I physically have some uncomfortable things going on in my body, and basically like nausea, and I'll try to just sit there with it and have good intentions to say just accept it, and it's impermanent, will go away. And yet when it starts to come as I'm trying to meditate, I get so, get out of here.
Well, full disclosure, I hate nausea. I do much better with right-on, full-on pain than nausea. But when you sit down to practice, and there's a little nausea, it's a perfect, I didn't even notice the weed eater stopped or whatever that was. Interesting. Now there's relief. When it's there, you're probably going to benefit most from taking that as your meditation object and turning toward nausea. And nausea is difficult because it's kind of unboundary. It's like, where is it? You can't zero in on it very effectively. And it has built in with it there's an agitation. It's like there's a danger. I might need to throw up. There's an unsettledness. It's not likely to be a very calm, pleasant state. However, it is what's happening. And so you could distract and see if that works. You could increase your concentration and mindfulness and push it aside and see if that works. You could reflect upon it being impermanent and see if that works. And you could also turn toward it and open and open and open. And notice, is it in your right foot? Is it in your left hand? Is it in your face? Where is it? And it's sort of difficult to locate, isn't it? It's there's nothing you can get a real bead on. And so to practice simply with that and to notice the suffering that's coming from, I don't want to have this experience. The fact is, I am having this experience. And this is very much what I was talking about in terms of my own whining, the tendency of this personality to whine. It shouldn't be like this. Well, you shouldn't have nausea when you meditate. Damn it. But you do. And so the question then arises, can you cultivate being at ease with the very unpleasant experience of nausea? And in a way, if we use the Western terminology, it would be to surrender into the nausea as what's happening in this moment. And to notice any disliking, to notice the disliking which causes more suffering. And then really open up into that. And sometimes I predict what will happen is the nausea will persist, but the suffering will go away. Because the suffering comes from the it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist, and what does it mean? And, is this a sign of real illness? And all that stuff that can happen.
That's helpful, because the more I try to distract, the more it's like I'm pushing it away, and that doesn't work.
Right. In my experience, I can distract and look away from minor experiences. But things that have much intensity, the only way out is through. The only way is to turn toward it and embrace it, and then do the work of that, of noticing the disliking and the stories that the mind tells. And maybe there's some anger. I hate this thing. But it's just opening and opening and opening toward it. Mm-hmm. I really don't like nausea. That first couple of days after my brain surgery, I had a lot of nausea. Throwing up with a 3-inch hole in the front of one's head. Of course, I was on some pretty substantial pain meds, but I was also sort of psychotic from one of the meds. That was really difficult. Something happened. At one time, I was coming out of delirium, basically, and suddenly there was extreme nausea, and I realized I was going to throw up. And my daughter Tara, who's very connected with me intuitively, was sitting over on this side, and I moved to throw up, and she showed up with a vomit bag, and it was like heaven. It's like someone took care of me. And only much later, when I told this story once, she said, Dad, there was no bag. That was my hands. She's a nurse. She's done lots of stuff like this. But it was quite interesting how I hallucinated a bag. And that distress, it's like, oh no, I'm going to throw up. Hope that's helpful. And I hope the nausea is not long-lived.
No one else also has to face nausea. May we all be free of nausea.
Yes, may we all be free. And they gave me a lot of that. What was that? There's a little Zofran, I think it's called, a little transparent thing you stick under my tongue, and it really helped. But then it was still there. Of course, they had cut a hole in my skull and all that.
Robert, I have a question for you.
I hear it's Michelina. Hello, my dear.
Hello.
Fancy meeting you here.
Yeah, indeed. Fancy that. So how do I, circling around this thing I want to ask you about, so for the last few days, I've been circling around, not completely going down, but circling around and being very close to this and in, but not completely down in this and I managed to come out of it last night. This state that I call triggered, and I was watching it, and it's like this kind of paralytic, contracted, ruminative, shameful, very, very tight place. And I remember and I was able to kind of see that's what kind of started it, and then I went here, and then I went here, and I went here, and then I'm just in this storm. And I've noticed that when I'm in that place, when I try to do sitting meditation, my body it contracts, and it's these convulsions in my legs and my hands and in my face, and it's really uncomfortable, but it will eventually kind of run its course. But I can only I have a really hard time sitting for 20 minutes. Yesterday at 17 minutes, I was I'm done. That's enough. I'm done. And I'm wondering if you could speak to do you know what that is? Is it should I be doing something other than sitting when I'm in that kind of state? Can you speak to that? Because it's pretty consistent when I'm in that state of being, and there's a lot of body itching,
body aching,
itching. Mm-hmm. Skin crawling feeling.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really unpleasant.
Yeah, it's.
You might want to reconsider birth next time.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Well, so you're having an experience that we can have. It sounds like there's some trauma that gets triggered, and then there's emotions and there's thoughts, and it's really a self-feeding storm. I'm reminded, I think I wrote about this in my book. I did my first retreat in India, in Bodh Gaya, and then my girlfriend and I, and she was leaving me when we got home, and so I was pretty freaked out. But anyway, we went on our trip, and we left the retreat, and then we hitchhiked down the east coast of India. We went to Sri Lanka, and came back and went to. Then we went up the west coast of Kerala on the mail boats, and then we took a boat to Goa, and all that detail was irrelevant. And we started to have one of our fights, but we never really fought. We didn't know. We were both so repressed that we just kind of went depressed. But something happened in me, and I went out and I walked in the streets of Goa all night. And it was a beautiful night. But inside there was this storm, this chaotic storm. And I could only just barely, I was mostly it. But I had the beginnings of mindfulness, and there was a little bit of ability to watch the storm, and there were some what I would now label as enemy imaging, and some despair, and it was this black, dark, horrible state that sometime a little before dawn, as I continued walking, just all the steam came out of it, and then it was gone. And I've been doing walking meditation for hours, 6 hours, maybe more. And I didn't get it yet, but it was later on, a year or 2 or 3 or 4 later, when I started doing therapy, that I realized that what was happening there were old patterns, old wounds were triggered, and I had no idea what to do with them. So you have a lot of strategies of how to deal with trauma that you've learned in your own explorations. And sometimes using one of them may be more skillful than sitting. For instance, sitting down and writing might be really useful. Or some kind of really conscious cathartic practice might be useful. Beating on a pillow or something like that kind of thing. Walking meditation might be really helpful. Sitting meditation might be helpful, but is in those kind of storms, sitting meditation will help you do no harm to yourself or anybody else through any action or speech. And walking meditation might be more skillful. Or doing some stretching, or swimming, or whatever, but bringing mindfulness with you to a larger object than simply the breath.
But movement meditation.
Movement, quite possibly.
Because walking isn't always possible when I'm in that state, because sometimes it does activate some pretty intense pain.
Right.
Stuff that kind of paralyzes the lower left part of my body.
You know, one of the things that Ruth came back to again and again and again was, and Jim does something like this sort of when he does the movement practice. If you wanted, let's say sitting here, I could create a movement practice which would be
And I'm seeing TRE and EFT in the chat.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you. Because I do have this. I think when I'm in that state too, I have this part of my rumination is I have to sit. I have to sit. I have to sit. And if I'm not doing my so I need to let myself expand what practice is and not.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Mindfulness of breathing is a strategy. It's a very powerful strategy, but it's not the essence of meditation. The essence of meditation is be here now.
So here's another thing that I want to check in about. That one of the ways I have historically dealt with being in these states is I have watched a lot of television. I find that to be a way to distract, and I notice that I kind of process in the background sometimes. But one of the things I've been noticing myself doing recently is watching television and coming back to the breath also noticing Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta in the program that I'm
Uh-huh.
watching, and that feels like kind of like it kind of like will kind of get me like partway there.
Well, with television, we create a trance state in which we suffer less. Why else would we watch so much TV? Because we're gone. We're in the story, and sometimes that could be helpful as a long-term strategy. Probably not so useful as being. We're moving in the direction of simply being aware of what's happening and recognizing that we're not any of it.
Recognizing that we're not
We're not it. That all those states, that incredible contracted, weirded out, reactive trauma, my prediction would be in time that will diminish to the point of not happening anymore. Or it may happen very mildly, but you would say then, as I do with my stuff like that, well, there's my personality. It's kind of a drag that I have to drag that part of myself around with me still, but there it is, and I can love it, and I know it'll pass, and it passes more and more quickly as time goes on.
Yeah, I have noted it is milder and it does pass more quickly, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yay. There's lots of good stuff in the chat. So, friends, it's noon. The blower is back, or whatever it is. Anybody else have anything else you'd like to say before we move on out of here?
Hey, one little thing, tidbit.
Michael.
A few years ago, I came across the phrase, all sounds are the voice of the Buddha. You know, it's not to be taken literally, but it's been a good little reminder for me when there's an annoying sound in my world, like leaf blowers, which I tend to have a major aversion to. So just a little encouragement for me to work with, like, yeah, this is something, it's an opportunity for me to work with something that's not what I want. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Well, do we have any kids in our scene? Danny just wrote, he is so funny. Danny Mankin. Where did it go? The simplest, oh, here it is at the bottom. The answer, my friend, is a blower in the wind. That's cool. The answer, my friend, is a blower in the wind. Oh dear. Well, let's sing our little humorous song, and humorous song with deep meaning, and find our way home. So please unmute yourself if you wish. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, while I think of it, I also put the link to the Keep Going On song in the chat. That was a good thing. All right. See you soon. Oh, I will not be here next Sunday. I forgot to check who is teaching, but I'll be teaching at Hollyhock. But this will happen. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sangha.
Goodbye, Kendall. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Denise. How's the farm today? Oh, you're at home today, I see. All right. Oh. All right. Now, to those of you on YouTube. Oh, there you are. YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for being here. I hope this was helpful.